The Great Pyramid, a symphony of solutions. The scale of the impossible. It is the last survivor of the seven wonders of the ancient world. For nearly 4 millennia, it was the tallest structure on Earth, a man-made mountain of stone rising from the Egyptian desert. But the Great Pyramid of Giza is more than just an ancient monument. It is a testament to a level of ambition and precision that challenges our understanding of the past. To stand at its base is to be confronted with a question that has captivated engineers, historians, and dreamers for centuries. How was this possible? The numbers behind the challenge are staggering. When completed during the reign of Pharaoh Khufu around 2560 BC, it soared to a height of nearly 147 meters, or 481 feet, capped with a gleaming pyramidion. Its base forms a near-perfect square, with each 230-meter side aligned with breathtaking accuracy to the cardinal points of the compass, an achievement of sophisticated surveying and astronomy. The entire structure is composed of an estimated 2.3 million individual blocks, weighing a total of nearly 6 million tons. This was accomplished by a civilization in the Bronze Age, a people without iron tools, without the wheel for transport, and without modern machinery. So how did they quarry, transport, and lift millions of multi-ton blocks with the precision of a Swiss watch? The answer begins by understanding that this was never intended to be a simple pile of stones. The evidence reveals a highly specified engineering project, a complex, purpose-built machine for the afterlife. The builders demonstrated a sophisticated understanding of material science, making deliberate choices for specific functions. The core of the pyramid was built from vast quantities of local limestone, a practical choice for bulk. The exterior was originally encased in fine white Tura limestone, brought from across the Nile and polished to a brilliant gleam. And for the most sacred and structurally critical heart of the pyramid, the king's chamber, they imported colossal beams of super-hard red granite, some weighing up to 80 tons, from Aswan, over 900 kilometers to the south. This differential use of materials, combined with ingenious engineering solutions, like the 5 relieving chambers designed to redirect the immense weight above the king's chamber, points to a detailed architectural plan. This was not just a construction project, it was an act of cosmic engineering designed for eternity. Understanding this purpose is the first step in unraveling the mystery of its creation. The human element, the city and the system for centuries, the popular imagination, fueled by ancient Greek accounts and cinematic epics, held that the pyramids were built by a vast army of slaves, toiling under the lash of a ruthless pharaoh. But one of the greatest discoveries of modern archaeology has systematically dismantled this myth, replacing it with a far more complex and impressive reality. Just southeast of the pyramids lies the site of a lost city, known today as Heit el-Ghurab, the city of the pyramid builders. This was no mere labor camp. It was a highly organized, purpose-built urban center, the base of operations for the entire project. Excavations have revealed a planned city with streets, massive bakeries capable of producing thousands of loaves of bread each day, fish processing facilities, and large gallery-style barracks that could house a rotating labor force estimated to be between 20,000 and 30,000 workers. This workforce was a complex hierarchy, a permanent, year-round skeleton crew of highly skilled masons, artisans, and project managers lived in more substantial houses. They were supplemented by a much larger contingent of temporary laborers, likely farmers who were conscripted to fulfill their labor tax, or corvée, during the annual Nile inundation when their fields were flooded and agricultural work was impossible. These were not slaves, they were state employees. Graffiti left behind in the quarries and on the pyramid blocks reveals they were organized into crews, or ziyar, with proud and sometimes playful names, like the Friends of Khufu Gang or the Drunkards of Menkaure Gang. Their compensation was a high-protein diet of bread, beer, fish, and meat, rations essential for fueling their strenuous work. The most poignant evidence of their status comes from their graves. In a dedicated cemetery near the city, these workers were given proper burials, a sign of respect from the state they served. The skeletal remains tell a remarkable story of a valued workforce. They show evidence of healed fractures and even advanced medical care. The logistical system that supplied this city and the construction site was a marvel in itself. A critical piece of this puzzle was uncovered with the discovery of the Diary of Merer, the oldest papyrus ever found. It is the 4,500-year-old logbook of a mid-level manager who documented the transport of Tura limestone to the pyramid. His account describes sailing through a network of man-made canals that brought the Nile's waters directly to a harbor at the pyramid's doorstep, a system long hypothesized and now confirmed by geological studies of ancient river sediments. The Diary of Merer is the tangible tip of a vast bureaucratic iceberg. The sheer scale of the pyramid project, sourcing materials from opposite ends of the country, managing a supply chain that fed a city-sized workforce for decades, and organizing that workforce into an efficient hierarchy, demanded an administrative apparatus of unprecedented sophistication. In this sense, the pyramid was not merely a product of the highly centralized Egyptian state. The process of its construction was one of the primary mechanisms through which that state was forged, refined, and perfected. The logistical challenges of the pyramid forced the evolution of the bureaucracy that would govern Egypt for centuries to come. The great debate, how to lift a mountain. Even with a skilled workforce and a brilliant supply chain, the central question remains: how did the Egyptians lift millions of multi-ton blocks to a height of nearly 150 meters? Within mainstream Egyptology, the debate has long centered on one core technology: the ramp. Archaeological evidence for construction ramps exists at other, smaller pyramid sites, but the specific configuration needed for a monument of this scale has been a subject of intense debate. The most straightforward concept is the straight or linear ramp. In this model, a single, massive ramp is built perpendicular to one of the pyramid's faces, growing longer and taller as the pyramid rises. While simple in theory, it is now largely rejected for the Great Pyramid due to insurmountable logistical problems. To maintain a workable gradient of no more than 8 to 10%, the ramp would have needed to be over 1.6 kilometers, a full mile, long. Such a structure would have required a volume of material approaching that of the pyramid itself, and no archaeological evidence for such a colossal structure has ever been found. A more materially efficient solution is the spiral or wraparound ramp. This model proposes a ramp that corkscrews around the pyramid's exterior, using the structure itself for support. This would explain the lack of massive ramp remains. However, it presents a critical and likely fatal flaw. The ramp would have completely obscured the four corners of the pyramid during construction, making it nearly impossible for the builders to perform the continuous, precise surveying necessary to ensure the four faces met perfectly at a single point at the apex. Furthermore, maneuvering large blocks and work teams around the tight 90-degree corners would have been incredibly difficult and inefficient. This process of elimination has led to a more recent and compelling hybrid theory developed by French architect Jean-Pierre Houdin, the internal ramp. Houdin proposes that a short, straight external ramp was used to build the lower third of the pyramid, which contains the majority of its mass in the heavy granite beams of the king's chamber. For the upper two-thirds, he posits the use of an internal ramp that spiraled upwards within the pyramid's core, just behind the outer face. This elegant theory solves several key problems at once. It accounts for the lack of evidence for a massive external ramp, it leaves the corners and faces open for surveying, and it provides a feasible method for reaching the pyramid's full height. It is supported by tantalizing circumstantial evidence, including a mysterious notch on the pyramid's northeast face that could be a corner of this internal ramp, and microgravity scans from the 1980s that detected a low-density, spiral-shaped anomaly inside the structure. Of course, ramps were not the only tool. The ancient Greek historian Herodotus wrote that the Egyptians used machines made of short timbers to lift blocks from one level to the next. This is widely interpreted as a system of levers. The use of levers is almost certain. Many blocks have been found with bosses or recesses cut into them, which would have provided perfect purchase points. Levers would have been indispensable for the final, precise maneuvering of each block into its exact position. However, most scholars doubt levering could have been the primary method for raising all 2.3 million blocks from the ground up. The process would have been incredibly slow and labor-intensive, making it difficult to achieve the construction rate needed to complete the pyramid in a 20 to 30-year time frame. He fact that no single theory, whether a straight ramp, a spiral ramp, or a levering system, can independently account for the entire construction process is not a failure of the research. Instead, it points toward a more nuanced truth. The builders were brilliant and pragmatic project managers who likely employed a dynamic, multimodal strategy using the right tool for each stage of the project. Unconventional answers, concrete and cosmic builders. Beyond the mainstream debate over ramps and levers, the Great Pyramid has attracted a wide array of alternative theories. The most scientifically credible of these challenges, the very nature of the stone itself, the geopolymer or cast stone hypothesis. First proposed by Joseph Davidovits, this theory suggests that many of the limestone blocks were not quarried and carved, but were cast in place using a form of ancient concrete. The recipe would have involved disaggregating natural limestone, mixing it with a binder like kaolin clay and lime, carrying the slurry up the pyramid in buckets, and pouring it into wooden molds. This process would elegantly solve two of the greatest mysteries: how the blocks, particularly the outer casing stones, were fitted together with astonishing precision, and how millions of multi-ton blocks were lifted to great heights. Proponents point to evidence from scanning electron microscopy, which reveals amorphous, non-crystalline cementing phases and chemical compositions in some samples that are inconsistent with natural limestone from the Giza quarries. However, the mainstream geological and Egyptological communities remain unconvinced. They argue that the vast Giza quarries, littered with partially cut blocks and ancient tools, provide overwhelming and undeniable evidence for a quarrying industry. They also contend that the chemical variations in the blocks are consistent with their being sourced from different layers within the quarry. And crucially, the geopolymer theory cannot account for the massive granite blocks of the King's Chamber, which are unequivocally natural, igneous rock that had to be quarried and transported from Aswan. Other fringe theories depart more radically from the archaeological record. A popular category posits that the pyramid's construction was impossible with Bronze Age tools, and must therefore be the work of a more advanced, lost civilization, or even extraterrestrial visitors. These theories are fundamentally arguments from personal incredulity. I can't believe they could do it, so they must have had help. They fail to offer any positive evidence for their claims, while simultaneously ignoring the mountain of concrete archaeological evidence that firmly roots the pyramid in the context of 4th Dynasty Egypt. The workers' city, the quarries, the tool marks, administrative papyri like the Diary of Merer, and the clear evolutionary sequence of pyramid construction from earlier tombs. Similarly, theories that the pyramid was not a tomb, but a granary or a power plant, are contradicted by the physical and cultural evidence. The pyramid is almost entirely solid stone, making it the world's most inefficient storage container, and the power plant theory relies on inventing physical processes and technologies for which there is zero evidence. Both ignore the fact that the Great Pyramid's design is a clear evolution of the royal mortuary complexes that preceded it. The enduring appeal of these ideas may stem from a psychological disconnect. The sheer awe inspired by the monument can make the mainstream explanation of organized human labor feel anticlimactic. Fringe theories provide a narrative that feels more proportionate to the grandeur of the structure itself, offering a secret that satisfies the emotional response to the sublime. New eyes on old stones. A forensic approach. The debate over the pyramid's construction is not static. In recent years, independent researchers, using digital platforms to disseminate their work, have brought a new methodology to the forefront, a kind of forensic archaeoengineering. By meticulously re-examining the physical stonework and resurrecting the often overlooked records of early explorers, they are using the monument itself as the primary text to challenge long-held assumptions. A compelling example is the mystery of the 4 narrow shafts originating from the king's and queen's chambers. The prevailing theory interprets them as symbolic passages for the king's soul to ascend to the circumpolar stars. But a forensic analysis of their construction tells a different story. Unlike the finely finished passages intended for royal use, the shafts are roughly hewn, change direction, and vary in their dimensions. Most importantly, a deep dive into the accounts of the 19th century explorers who first cleared them reveals a critical fact. The shafts in the king's chamber were originally sealed at their inner ends and were forcibly chiseled open from within the chamber. The queen's chamber shafts were never even fully completed. The physical evidence of a shaft being built in a sealed state strongly contradicts a pre-planned, purely symbolic function like a star alignment. It points instead to a more practical, utilitarian purpose, perhaps for ventilation for workers during the final stages of construction or for complex multi-day burial rituals. This forensic approach yields other fascinating observations. It has brought attention to a little-known finding from a 1986 survey which discovered anomalous, well-graded quartz sand, a material transported from a considerable distance, packed behind the fine masonry of an interior passage. This suggests sand may have been a key construction material, perhaps used to fill large voids for stability or as a leveling medium. Furthermore, a detailed survey of the few remaining casing stones at the summit of the neighboring pyramid of Khafra reveals that the construction process was not a simplistic stacking of identical blocks. Instead, it was an adaptive and efficient process. The builders used tapered smaller blocks to fill gaps and larger bonding stones to tie courses together, solving geometric problems on the fly. This physical evidence demonstrates a level of pragmatism that challenges overly simplistic construction theories. It shows that the monument itself is a historical text, and by learning to read the stone, we can uncover new chapters in the story of how it was built. Conclusion: a synthesis of genius. After reviewing the evidence, from the physical data of the monument itself, to the organization of its builders, to the full spectrum of proposed methodologies, one conclusion becomes clear. The enduring mystery of how the Great Pyramid was built is not due to a lack of evidence. It is because we have been searching for a single monolithic secret when the reality is far more ingenious. The most logical, evidence-supported paradigm is not one lost technique, but a dynamic, multimodal construction sequence, a masterpiece of adaptive project management. Phase 1, the foundation. For the lower courses, which contain the majority of the pyramid's mass, the builders would have used a massive, wide, straight external ramp. This was the most efficient way to deliver the enormous volume of material and was necessary to haul the colossal 50 to 80-ton granite beams up to the level of the king's chamber. Phase 2, the ascent. As the pyramid grew taller and the external ramp became untenable, the builders transitioned their strategy. The external ramp was dismantled, its materials efficiently repurposed, and carried up a newly operational internal ramp. This allowed construction to proceed rapidly to the summit while keeping the exterior faces clear for precise surveying. Phase 3, the apex. In the confined space near the summit, even an internal ramp would become cramped. Here, the builders would have relied heavily on sophisticated levering techniques to maneuver the final blocks and the pyramidion into place. The fine Tura limestone casing was likely applied from the top down, with workers polishing the stones as the last of the construction structures were removed, leaving the finished, gleaming monument behind. This hybrid model harmonizes the strengths of the leading theories while mitigating their individual weaknesses. It paints a picture of the ancient Egyptian builders not as keepers of a single lost secret, but as brilliant and pragmatic engineers who deployed a versatile and evolving toolkit of techniques to solve the greatest construction challenge of their age. The true marvel of the Great Pyramid, then, is not some lost technology or a message from the stars. It is something far more profound and far more impressive, a documented and awe-inspiring testament to the power of human ingenuity, organization, and the will to build for eternity.